She hurt the wrong girl. And now she's back stronger. But before you judge what that means, stay with me. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that you couldn't imagine them lying to you, this story is for you. And if it stirs something in you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes the worst heartbreaks don't come from lovers, they come from friends. My name is Lena. And this is the story of how my best friend broke me. And how I learned to rebuild from the ruins she left behind. I met Mara 12 years ago, my first week at university. We were both scholarship students, two girls from small towns, terrified of the city but pretending not to be. She had this quick wit, this spark that made everyone want to be around her. And me? I was quieter, the planner, the note-taker, the one who believed loyalty was currency. We became inseparable. Every all-nighter, every heartbreak, every bad grade, she was there. We said we'd build something together one day. Something that's ours, she'd say, eyes glowing with possibility. And for years, I believed her. After graduation, we both landed jobs in the same marketing firm, junior analysts, scraping by but chasing dreams. Our friendship became a partnership. She had the charm, I had the discipline. Together, we were unstoppable. By our fourth year, I'd developed an idea, a digital branding model that helped small businesses grow using social storytelling. It was data-heavy, creative, different from what the company was doing. When I told Mara about it, she said, "Lena, this is our way out. We'll pitch it together. We'll finally be free from this place." So we stayed late nights, after everyone left, fueled by takeout noodles and energy drinks. I built the algorithms, she shaped the presentation. It was our secret. Or so I thought. When the day of the pitch arrived, I got an email from the director saying the meeting was moved up an hour earlier. I was in traffic. Mara had the presentation on her drive. She texted, "Don't worry, I'll handle the intro until you get here." By the time I arrived, sweating, breathless, ready to jump in, the boardroom was silent. Everyone was looking at Mara. She stood in front of the projector, my slides glowing behind her. But she wasn't saying, "we." She was saying, "I." I froze. For a second, I thought maybe she just slipped, that she'd correct herself. But then I saw her smile, that practiced, confident grin I'd always admired. And the words left her mouth like a knife wrapped in silk. "I built this model because I believe our firm can evolve beyond conventional marketing. My firm. My idea." She didn't just betray me, she erased me. When the applause came, it was deafening. The CEO shook her hand. The director said she was lead material. And me? I stood in the doorway, invisible. Afterward, I confronted her in the restroom. "Mara, what did you just do?" I whispered, trembling. She didn't look ashamed. She looked relieved. "Lena," she said, "you're brilliant. But you don't know how to play the game. I'll make sure you're taken care of. Don't ruin this for both of us." That night, I cried harder than I did when my father died. Because I didn't lose an idea, I lost the person I trusted most. For weeks, I thought about reporting her. But every email trail, every file, she'd already scrubbed it. She'd even sent emails from our shared account to make it look like I'd helped her after the pitch. She played it perfectly. Then came the promotion. She became senior strategist. And I was transferred to a smaller team, a polite demotion. Everyone thought I was jealous. And that's when I learned something cruel. When a liar smiles, the world often believes them before they question you. Months went by. I stopped talking much at work. Stopped trying. I just needed a way out. But fate, or maybe justice, had other plans. One evening, while sorting through old project folders for my exit handover, I found a backup drive. It was labeled with a date, 3 weeks before the pitch. Curious, I opened it. Inside was an early prototype of my model, but in the file info, the last modified by name read, Mara. Except, there was something else. A hidden folder, password protected. My heart raced. I tried every password I could think of, our inside jokes, her dog's name, her birthday. Nothing. Until finally, I typed the name of her ex-boyfriend. The folder opened. Inside were documents, emails between Mara and a rival firm. They'd been paying her, my friend, to feed them ideas from inside our company for over a year. I sat frozen. Every word blurred together, payment confirmations, meeting notes, my project proposal. She'd sold my work, our company's data, for money. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either. I just printed everything, sealed it in an envelope, and the next morning, placed it anonymously on the director's desk. 2 days later, the company launched a quiet internal investigation. They questioned everyone, including me. I told the truth, calmly, simply. But that's when I made my mistake. I underestimated her. Mara found out someone had exposed her. And she made sure I paid the price. She told HR I had a vendetta, that I was mentally unstable, still obsessed with her success. And because she had the influence, they believed her. I was suspended, pending further review. My name was cleared eventually, but by then, the damage was done. Reputation destroyed. Friends gone. Savings drained. I remember sitting alone in my apartment the night I got the suspension letter, empty walls, empty phone, just that same backup drive on my desk. And I whispered to myself, she hurt the wrong girl. It took 6 months. 6 months of silence, rebuilding, learning how to fight smart. I left the firm. Started freelancing. And using every bit of skill she once stole from me, I built a small client base, quiet, loyal, independent. Then, I started something new, a consultancy that specialized in corporate ethics. Irony, right? At first, nobody cared. Until one day, I got an email. It was from the same rival firm she'd been feeding information to. They said they'd been impressed by my reputation for integrity and wanted me to review a compliance breach involving a former contractor. That contractor was Mara. When I walked into their glass office that morning, she was already there. Sitting across the table, fidgeting. When she saw me, her face drained of color. She whispered, "Lena." I sat down. Calm. Professional. "Let's begin," I said. She knew. I didn't need revenge anymore, I had truth. But here's where the story turns again, because truth doesn't always heal right away. When the investigation concluded, she lost everything, position, reputation, friends. And for a while, I thought I'd feel peace. But instead, I felt nothing. Because closure doesn't come when they fall. It comes when you finally stop needing them to. It's been 2 years now. I run my own agency. My story's been published anonymously in ethics journals. And sometimes, when I walk through the city and pass someone laughing in the same way she used to, I still feel that old sting. But then I remember, she didn't break me. She refined me. If you've ever trusted someone who turned out to be your greatest threat, you're not weak for having loved them. You're strong for having survived them. But remember this, when they hurt the wrong girl, and she learns the truth, she doesn't come back to destroy. She comes back to win. People think once you've exposed someone, the story ends. But the truth? Sometimes, exposure is only the beginning. After Mara's contract was terminated, word spread quietly through the industry. People whispered her name like a warning. Some pitied her, others avoided her. And me, I told myself I was done. I deleted old emails, threw out everything with her handwriting, even changed my commute just so I wouldn't pass our old cafe. I thought I was finally free. But peace doesn't come that easily, not when deceit leaves a shadow. It started with a message. An anonymous one. You think you know what she did. But you only saw half the story. Attached was a single file, a scanned contract between Mara and my own first client. The same client that helped me build my new business. My chest went cold. The signature date was a week before I launched my agency. Which meant, she'd gotten to them first. I reached out to the client, trying to stay calm. They said it was standard procedure. That they'd worked with Mara before, and she had given them market insights to help build their new campaign. But when I compared that campaign to mine, it was almost identical. Same phrasing. Same data pattern. She had stolen from me again, through someone else. I didn't know what to do. If I exposed her again, it would look like obsession. People would say I was haunted by her, unable to move on. So I did nothing. For the first time since all of it began, I stayed silent. But silence has a cost. Within 2 months, 3 of my biggest contracts pulled out, citing conflict of interest. Someone was feeding them stories. When I finally got the courage to dig, I discovered anonymous messages had been sent to my clients, old screenshots, fake quotes, emails edited to make it look like I'd stolen work from Mara. And it worked. I went from being a rising voice in corporate ethics to being a liability. The night I realized my company was collapsing, I sat on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by unpaid invoices and legal letters. And I asked myself, was I wrong to fight back in the first place? It's funny how betrayal makes you question your own reflection. Because part of you starts wondering if maybe you are the problem. For a while, I disappeared. No phone. No clients. Just me, a half-empty notebook, and the same city that once felt like promise. 3 months later, I got a letter. Not an email, a handwritten letter, in her handwriting. It said, "You could have walked away. But you chose to fight. And now you'll learn, I don't lose." No signature. No address. Just that. I didn't cry this time. I laughed, bitter, exhausted. Because for the first time, I realized she wasn't just a betrayer. She was addicted to control. And people like that, they always go too far. So I did what I do best. I watched. Quietly. Patiently. I started rebuilding, again. But this time, in the shadows. No social media. No announcements. Just silent partnerships, under new project names. Meanwhile, I traced her moves. Every contract, every company she touched. I built a map, a digital web of her new ventures, her aliases, her hidden investors. And one thing stood out. A consulting firm, registered under a name I didn't recognize, but linked to her through a shared P.O. box. That firm had just received a $2.3 million investment from a fund she once helped embezzle from our old employer. That was the crack. Over the next month, I documented everything. Emails. IP addresses. Financial trails. And when I had enough, I reached out, not to lawyers this time, but to a journalist I'd met years ago during our firm's ethics workshops. Her name was Tara. She specialized in corporate whistleblowing. When I showed her what I had, she went silent for a full minute. Then she said, "Lena, this isn't just betrayal. This is criminal." The article was published 6 weeks later. Headline: Ex-consultant linked to multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. It didn't name me, But people who knew, knew. The investigation exploded. News outlets picked it up. Investors pulled out. Her company collapsed in days. And for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt clarity. But life isn't a movie. Because just when I thought justice had landed, I received a notice from the authorities, requesting my statement. Apparently, Mara had filed a counterclaim, accusing me of cyber intrusion and data theft. She was trying to turn the entire case against me. And because I had indeed gathered data, without clearance, it wasn't impossible. For the second time, I was standing on the edge of losing everything. I remember sitting in the interview room, sterile and grey, with two investigators across the table. They asked me how I'd gotten the files. I told them the truth, that I accessed them through open sources, public documents, and traceable IPs. They didn't believe me. They said I'd likely exceeded authorization. For the next 3 weeks, I lived in limbo, waiting for a verdict that could ruin me forever. My company froze. My clients paused contracts. Everything was hanging by a thread. And then one morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating non-stop. Tara had sent me a message, "Turn on the news." I did. There it was, breaking coverage. Leaked records reveal secondary fraud accounts linked to former consultant's alias. The alias was hers. The evidence came from an anonymous whistleblower inside her new firm, someone she had underpaid, manipulated, and discarded. That person had handed over the real files, proving my innocence completely. She was arrested the same week. When I walked out of the courthouse after giving my final statement, the air felt different. Not lighter, just real. I'd lost 2 years of my life, my peace, my name. But I'd gained something more valuable. Proof that patience can be sharper than revenge. She hurt me more than anyone ever could. But the thing about truth is, it doesn't need to scream. It just waits. And when it finally speaks, it's undeniable. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who once called you friend, remember this: evil doesn't always announce itself with anger. Sometimes it smiles. But smiles fade. And truth never does. You'd think after winning, you'd finally feel free. But the truth is, sometimes peace feels heavier than pain. They called it justice. But what they never tell you is what comes after justice. The silence, the isolation, the echo of everything you've lost. And that's where my story really begins. I moved to a small apartment on the city's edge. No more noise. No more headlines. Just quiet. At night, I'd stare at the ceiling, asking myself, if I fought so hard for the truth, why does it still hurt? The betrayal had ended, but its shadow hadn't. Because it's easy to prove someone else's guilt. Harder to prove to yourself that you're still worth trusting. I started writing again. Not business plans, not reports, just thoughts. Every memory I'd tried to suppress came back. Like a film I couldn't pause. I wrote about the first time I met Mara. The way we'd laughed so hard we cried. The night we swore we'd never lie to each other. And somewhere between those words, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was grieving. I thought grief only came with death. But betrayal is a kind of death too. The death of we. The burial of trust. The mourning of a shared language no one else speaks. And once I accepted that, I started to breathe again. One evening, I went to a local business forum. Just to feel normal again. Small crowd, low lights, friendly faces. That's where I met Ethan. He ran a tech startup that focused on transparency systems. Basically tools to track ethical funding. We started talking. It felt harmless at first. Then it felt comforting. And that scared me. Because for the first time, I saw what trust could look like again. And I wasn't sure I deserved it. Weeks turned into months. We collaborated on a few projects, quietly, professionally. He never asked about my past. But one night, over coffee, he said something I never forgot. Sometimes, he said, it's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you can still build without their permission. That line hit me harder than any courtroom verdict. Because it wasn't revenge anymore. It was rebirth. Together, we began building a new platform. A network that connected whistleblowers and corporate survivors. People who'd been silenced like I once was. It grew faster than we expected. Messages poured in from people across the world. Your story helped me find my courage. Now I know I'm not crazy. Thank you for speaking what I couldn't. Every message reminded me. The pain had purpose. A year later, I was invited to speak at a leadership conference. The same kind of event where I once sat in the audience, invisible. Watching Mara take credit for my work. I almost said no. But then I thought, what if someone out there needs to hear the truth from someone who survived it? When I walked onto that stage, the lights were blinding. Like they were back then. I took a deep breath. Looked into the crowd. And began. I used to think betrayal was the end of my story. But it was only the beginning. Because what I lost taught me what I can't be stolen from: my integrity, my voice, my peace. The room was silent. Not uncomfortable silence. The kind that listens. After that day, I never saw Mara again. Rumors said she'd moved overseas. Started over under a new name. And honestly, I hope she found what she was running from. Because I wasn't running anymore. I was arriving. I still have the old notebook I kept through those years. The pages are messy, stained, uneven. But on the last page, there's a line I wrote after everything ended. They can take your name, your work, your peace, for a while. But they can never take your truth. And that's what I live by now. If you've ever been betrayed by a friend, if you've ever looked in the mirror and wondered how you'll trust again, this is your reminder. You will. Not the same way. Not with the same people. But you will. Because when someone hurts the wrong girl, she doesn't come back louder. She comes back wiser, stronger, and untouchable. It's been 3 years now. 3 years since I stood on that stage and told a room full of strangers what it means to rebuild from nothing. Sometimes I forget what her face looks like, Mara's, I mean. Not because I've erased her, but because I've replaced her with the faces of people I've met along the way. The woman who started a business after losing everything. The man who forgave his partner and chose peace over pride. The quiet ones, the ones who don't post, don't shout, don't gloat. Just heal. There's a peace that comes when your story is no longer about them. When you stop telling it to prove something and start telling it to connect. I get messages still, every week. People who say, I saw myself in your story. And every time I read those words, I whisper. You're supposed to. Because this was never about revenge. It was about recognition. The silent agreement between survivors. I see you. You're not alone. I still walk by the water every morning. Same path. Same tide. The waves always erase my footprints within seconds. And I like that. Because maybe stories aren't meant to be permanent. Just passed on. Last month, I found one of the old letters she sent me. The edges were frayed, the ink almost gone. But on the back, in my handwriting, I'd scribbled something years ago. It said, you can burn paper. But you can't burn truth. I folded it back into the envelope and placed it in a box. Not out of pain. Out of gratitude. Because without her, without the lies, the loss, the lessons, I wouldn't have become this version of me. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to endure. And mine has. My name is Leah. And this was my story. A story about friendship, trust, and the cost of truth. If it spoke to you, if it reminded you of your own battles, stay with me. Because there are more stories like this. Stories of people who fell, got up, and found something honest waiting on the other side.